If you're a One Piece fan, you already know the time skip is the line in the sand. Before it, Luffy wins a lot of fights by being stubborn, lucky, and weird in the best way. After it, he starts looking like someone who can walk into the new world and not get murked the first time an actual monster decides to take him seriously. In canon, Rayleigh is the one who picks him up after Marineford. Rayleigh teaches him the basics of all three Haki types, and he tells him 2 years is only enough for the basics, because Haki can only bloom in real life or death situations. Now let's swap one thing. Same Marineford, same broken Luffy, same grief, same anger. But the person who steps in isn't Rayleigh, it's Garp. And no, so nobody gets nervous, Luffy is not becoming a marine in this what if. He's still a pirate. He still chooses the same dream. He still chooses freedom. If this turns into Garp fixes Luffy by putting him in a uniform, the whole idea collapses. Because that's not Luffy and that's not Garp. The real Garp is a man split in half. Duty on one side, family on the other. And he has been, holding that split together with pure stubbornness for decades. Marineford is the day the crack shows. Garp didn't save Ace from the execution stand. And I don't think he ever would have. Ace chose his path even after Garp warned him and pushed him away from it for years. Garp can tell himself that Ace is facing the consequences of his own choices. And he can keep standing there because duty is the life he has lived. But what drives him over the edge that day is not simply the fact that Ace gets executed. It's Akainu killing Ace after Ace has already been freed. After Luffy and Whitebeard's side actually pull it off and get Ace off the platform. That little hope inside of him of Ace staying alive gets crushed in the most brutal way possible. And that's why Garp almost attacks Akainu right there. So in this what if, Garp doesn't switch sides. He doesn't suddenly approve of piracy. He doesn't start talking like Dragon. What changes is more personal than that. He makes a decision. He is not watching that happen again, not to Luffy. He still doesn't agree with Luffy's choice, and he probably never will. What he does instead is accept the one thing he can't change, which is that Luffy will walk his own road, and then he grabs the one thing he still can control, which is whether Luffy is strong enough to survive the road he insists on walking. Now the question fans always ask is, how does Garp train Luffy without the Marines finding out? The clean answer is privilege. Garp is Garp. People don't micromanage him like a normal officer. And after Marineford, he's more or less semi-retired anyway and training recruits, which gives him room to disappear for stretches without anyone demanding a detailed itinerary. So he takes Luffy on some remote island. It's just Garp and Luffy. And the training begins the way you'd expect, with a big fist of love. Now this is where the Rayleigh comparison matters, because it keeps the what if grounded instead of turning into pure fan service. Rayleigh turned Luffy like a teacher. He aimed for balance, because Luffy needed a full toolkit, armament, observation, conquerors, all at a basic usable level. Rayleigh also made Luffy independent on purpose. Heck, Rayleigh left him to train by himself by the end because Luffy learned the basics in just a year and a half. But Garp is not balanced like that. He's a military man. He trains you the way the world trains you. He doesn't care if you can explain Haki with nice words. He cares if you can take a hit, stay on your feet, and still land your own hit when it matters. And we already know Garp's method works, even on someone who started with almost nothing. Look at Kobe. Kobe goes from a terrified kid to someone strong and dependable real fast. And it wasn't only learn Haki, good job. It was brutal training that changes your body physically and sharpens your instincts. The battleship bags are the perfect example of this. Garp did it himself for years. Kuzan did it too when he was Garp's student. Then later Kobe does it in secret too. So of course, the battleship bags show up in Luffy's training. Before any Haki, before any fancy techniques. Day after day, Luffy's just toiling away at those giant ship hulls. No Haki, just fists and pain and repetition. This first phase is just brutal endurance and strength training. Long days, heavy work, the kind of routine that doesn't look creative. But it changes how long you can keep going when your body wants to quit. Luffy hates it. He runs until his legs feel dead. Then Garp makes him keep moving anyway. Luffy carries and drags and lifts until his arms shake. Then he still has to spar afterward. The goal is simple. Build a body that can keep fighting even when it should have stopped. Then the second phase is sparring. And it isn't friendly sparring. He's forced to stay sharp while tired. Forced to protect his openings. Forced to keep his head when you're annoyed. Garp doesn't let Luffy get away with any kind of sloppiness. If Luffy takes a clean hit he didn't need to take, Garp treats it like a real mistake. Because against the wrong opponent, that mistake is the end. And once Luffy stops losing to obvious mistakes, Garp starts tightening the thing that causes most of those mistakes in the first place. Movement. Now this is also where Rokushiki gets involved. But not in the Garp teaches all 6 forms way you would imagine. Garp doesn't turn Luffy into a CP9 agent. He takes the parts that already exist inside Luffy's style and deliberately improves on them. Because Luffy already copied the idea of Soru and Geppo back at Eni's lobby. He didn't call them that, but Gear 2 was his answer to Rokushiki's speed, and those bursts of movements look a lot like Soru. He even had moments where you could stay airborne and chase, which is basically the same problem Geppo solves. So he corrects footwork and timing so Luffy isn't wasting energy every time he moves fast. He pushes Luffy toward that post-time skip mastery of Gear 2 and Gear 3 sooner, where those forms don't drain him and have the same side effects the way they used to. That's a big deal because it changes how long Luffy can fight at high speed without feeling like he's borrowing time from his own body. Once Luffy's base body is tougher, Haki comes into the picture and it's something that Garp demands in every exchange. Aside from the basics, Rayleigh showed Luffy advanced forms and flashes. The collar breaking at Sabaody is advanced armament, damage from the inside. Redirecting the elephant's foot without clean contact, is showing that armament can reach outward. So Rayleigh did hint at advanced Haki. He just didn't try to force Luffy into mastering it in 2 years. Because again, Haki truly blooms in life or death situations. Garp doesn't necessarily disagree with that approach, but he doesn't wait around either. He trains Luffy like a man, preparing him for the kind of enemies where normal hardening isn't enough. This is where we make the big choice for this what if. Instead of waiting till Wano, Garp actually manages to teach Luffy advanced armament, to a usable level at least. And this is possible because advanced armament is a skill you can drill, even if the perfect version still gets sharpened in life or death fights. Garp is an expert on this. This is how he fights. He's a fist-first monster who specializes in direct infusion and overwhelming impact. So Garp teaches Luffy both steps. First is emission. That invisible barrier you can push outward so your strike lands without perfect contact. Garp forces Luffy to punch targets he's not allowed to fully touch. He makes him land hits when the opponent is barely outside range. He makes him strike through guards instead of only around them. Every time Luffy fails, Garp makes him feel the difference by doing it back. So the idea becomes physical instead of theoretical. Then comes internal destruction, the step where the Haki goes into the target and damages from the inside. Garp does not let Luffy treat it like a special move. He forces it into normal punches. He makes Luffy hit tough targets where coding isn't enough, and he keeps pushing the same idea. Stop trying to break the outside, start trying to damage what's underneath. And because Garp is strict about it, armament becomes a habit. Luffy stops thinking of it like a switch he flips for big moments. It's just the default. By the end of the 2 years, Luffy is not a perfect advanced armament master, but it is usable. He can create that invisible barrier, and he can do internal damage when he focuses and times it right. Now Conqueror stays on the canon rule. You can control it, but you can't train it to be stronger directly. It's the embodiment of the user, and this gets even more confusing for the advanced version, because it's not really neatly explained in the manga either. So when we talk about advanced conquerors, the cleanest way to understand it is that it acts like a multiplier. It rides on top of whatever you're already doing and turns the output way up. If you add it to an attack, the damage jumps hard. If you add it on top of armament, then the armament effect gets sharper too. And that's why those top tier sky-splitting clashes look like they aren't even touching. Garp can't hand Luffy that state. What he can do is make sure the base toolkit is clean enough that when the multiplier finally clicks later in a real fight, it has something good to boost. And he can give Luffy constant exposure to what top tier pressure feels like when it's attached to fists. Because when Garp gets serious, then he's one of the scariest people in the verse. This training also challenges Luffy's moves without needing a whole new move list. Observation is a bit tricky because we haven't seen Garp really use it as much as other forms of Haki. But he's still presumably an expert, so it still develops, just in a different flavor. Rayleigh's style is calm and structured, blindfold drills and reading intent. Garp's style is ugly and practical, random attacks at random times, punishment if you relax. Learning to stay sharp when you're tired and annoyed. It doesn't replace the way Future Sight is unlocked, because Future Sight still comes from surviving someone like Katakuri long enough to learn it. But it does make Luffy harder to rattle, and that matters because you can't read anything cleanly if you're panicking. And Gear 4 still happens because that's Luffy. He solves problems by turning his body into an answer. The difference is the armament inside Gear 4 is sharper and more efficient. The form hits harder earlier, and it wastes less energy doing it. The crash still exists, but it's less helpless because his conditioning and pacing are better. Now we run the ripple effects fast. Sabaody, Fishman Island, and Punk Hazard pretty much go down the same way, maybe even a bit faster. The first major difference would be on Dressrosa, though Flamingo still forces Gear 4, but Luffy's base hits hurt more before it even comes out. And the downtime is less scary because Luffy recovers faster and manages his stamina better. On Whole Cake Island, Cracker also goes down quicker because advanced armament plus improved recovery on Gear 4 gives Luffy a better answer to break through his defense, and he stops wasting time. Katakuri still humbles him, and we don't cheapen that fight, because Future Sight is still earned by being pushed, but Luffy probably adapts faster because he breaks less under pressure. In Wano, Kaido still crushes him early, because that wall has to stay a wall, but his time in Udon could be much shorter. And once Luffy goes against Kaido on the rooftop, the advanced armament work clicks faster because Garp already drilled the foundation. And when Conqueror's coding becomes the key at the top tier, Luffy recognizes what he needs sooner, because he has felt that pressure style of striking before. So the pattern is simple. This what if does not turn Luffy into a different person. It tightens his growth. He wastes less time, takes less avoidable damage, and adapts faster once fights get serious. So here's the question I want to end on, because this is the part fans will actually argue about. If Garp trained Luffy for those 2 years, what feels like the bigger change to you? The fact that Luffy comes back with advanced armament, or the fact that Garp is basically admitting, without saying it, that he's done letting duty be the thing that cost him his family?